Honorable members, when the business of this House suspended for the luncheon break, the Honorable Member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros had reserved the floor. However, okay. Thank you. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Centerville.
Much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much, Honorable Member for Mangrove Key and South Andros. First of all, I want to once again thank the people of Centerville for affording me this opportunity to serve and to be able to represent the majority of their views in the House of Assembly here in the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I beg leave to just speak to school visits that we have been having in the Centerville constituency. We have 5 schools in the Centerville constituency, and all of the schools, Mr. Speaker, are doing very well. Teachers and children are doing very well despite the circumstances in terms of the physical shape that the schools are in. We do hope that at some point the government or governments would find it necessary to build new schools, taking into consideration the health and the safety and protection of our children. Also, Mr. Speaker, the Centerville constituency usually posts on its Facebook page a summary of parliamentary activities that take place once we have met in Parliament. So I encourage all to take a look at our Facebook page for a summary. I also want to mention that the Centerville constituency will have a Christmas giveaway, and I wish all the constituents of Centerville and all businesses that are part of the Centerville community a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. As always, Mr. Speaker, I speak to the torchbearers, the young liberals, the young DNAs, and to all young persons who are politically motivated or would like to be in public service at some point. And I do this, Mr. Speaker, because I know what I want the Bahamas to look like. I want to say Happy Advent to my church members at the St. Agnes Church and all who are celebrating the church's New Year as we commit ourselves to what is right, what is good, and what is just. Mr. Speaker, I am no expert in the field of aviation, so I just want to make some general observations. I want to first recognize the minister responsible for aviation for bringing regulations accompanying the bill. This, Mr. Speaker, as you know, I'm a proponent of regulations as they help us to drive the necessary legislation in terms of how it can benefit our people. I want to also, Mr. Speaker, recognize the member for Angliston and to recognize her presentation in terms of educating myself and the people about the aviation industry. That was impactful to me and impactful to the many Centervillians actually that were watching. So I wanted to commend her for sharing a knowledge and the history that I think most of us can benefit from. Let me also thank the Auditor General for the tabling of 5 reports, inclusive of 2 from Foreign Affairs, Beijing and London, as well as the Scholarship Process Review Report and a report of an agreement between the Ministry of Education and Housing and NIB that was tabled last week. I encourage all persons to review those reports. Mr. Speaker, just curious to know if there is yet a response to the people's petition to a request for a Ministry of Natural Resources, as well as is there a response to the request by the people for a review of the Quieting Titles Act. Centerville is yet again, Mr. Speaker, asking for a report from the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Assembly and a report from the Public Treasury Committee of the House of Assembly on the state of the public treasury. And while I am at it, Mr. Speaker, I will also like to again ask if we would have gotten any responses from the House Rules and Business Committee that was due to meet sometime within the last 2.5 years. You see, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about blacklisting, we cannot think of it in a box. It has a lot to do with how we run our affairs as a people and as a parliament. They are watching our lawmakers and our enforcers. They are watching whether we are serious about implementing the laws that we make, whether our acts have regulations, and are they guided by policies. So to me, Mr. Speaker, it goes a little deeper than the goalpost moving. It's about a strategy to sustain and protect our people and our country. Mr. Speaker, the international world reviews our competencies and our responsiveness. They then determine, is it a system of meritocracy or one of political loyalties to the detriment of the progress of a people and a nation? As I would have reviewed, and I, of course, listened to the presentations earlier, Centerville acknowledges the need for standards and the need for their implementation. We acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, conventions and the commitment of ICAO to organizational growth and development. We acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, the technical expertise required, as well as an overall goal of keeping an industry such as this safe and secure. I would like to ask the Minister to table the latest recommendations of ICAO along with the No Country Left Behind initiative. You see, Mr. Speaker, it is my goal to make sure that no Bahamians are left behind, as we intend to move forward with what some may say is quite a lucrative registry and or industry. You see, Bahamians acknowledge the need for safety and aircraft accidents investigations. What we want to know is, will the reports be non-politicized? Will there be accountability and transparency? Will there be recourse for loved ones when we fail to act or respond responsively? What will this lead to? Yes, a better recognized industry, but would it lead to adequate responsiveness and closure for families impacted? Or is this just another shelf legislation whose means to an end is to establish an aircraft registration and or yet another authority? In light of so many incidents as of late, it is important to understand the human side. The people side, Mr. Speaker, of legislation and the impact of the legislation on people. As always, Mr. Speaker, I like to look at the benefit of the legislation to the Bahamian people and the impact it will have on our socio-economic welfare. I am happy to see an industry where career paths may be established for Bahamians. I can only hope that the education and the experience of our Bahamian people is respected in this authority, and they are compensated like anyone else around the world in this particular profession. Mr. Speaker, I would like to have seen an industry, I'd like to see more encouragement of the aircraft industry throughout our educational system and for our people. I'd like to see an airplane, old one maybe at BTVI, where young men and women interested in the aircraft industry are able to grow in mechanics and engineering in order to facilitate their understanding in such a profession or such an industry. No doubt, Mr. Speaker, there have been significant milestones in this industry, like mentioned earlier. The declaration of intent, the establishment of a national policy on air connectivity, and of course, the advancement in the monetization of our airspace. How, Mr. Speaker, is it all impacting the everyday lives of Bahamians? Mr. Speaker, the minister spoke of the professional expertise of the team, and I'd like to encourage those professionals not to become a rubber stamp. Your goal may be safety, and your goal may be accident investigation. However, the goal of others may be an aircraft registry, or maybe capitalism. I recognize, Mr. Speaker, the legislation speaking to external audits. It is my opinion that we should have legislated self-assessments with a view to internal audit and quality control. As such, developing the expertise of our professionals in this business, in this industry, with a view to enhance expertise and with a view to chart a way forward, even past a registry. Guidelines and policies, Mr. Speaker, should speak to continued education and career paths. I'm very glad that the IDB loan encourages these standards. However, we must not drop the ball. Mr. Speaker, and finally and in closing, I pray that the Bahamian people will benefit from its airspace. I pray that the Bahamian people will benefit from this aircraft registry and that they are the recipients of any opportunities that may be derived therefrom. We no doubt need standards where the safety and security of our people are at stake. We no doubt need a robust aircraft accident investigation regime. We need to know that all measures were and are being taken to secure the Bahamas for Bahamians, and that there is recourse and closure where and when necessary. Mr. Speaker, Centerville supports the prima facie intent of this bill. However, we look forward to the opportunities and the socio-economic benefits that is possible for this legislation to create. God bless the people and the constituents of Centerville, members of the House of Assembly, as well as the entire Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Stand to make a brief contribution to the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority Bill of 2019 on behalf of the great people of the Mangrove Key South Central Andros constituency. And I know at the outset that the sole objective being that of investigation of an aircraft accident or incident conducted under this act shall be the prevention of accidents and incidents. 2, the investigations by the authorities shall be conducted separately from investigations conducted for the purposes of establishing blame, civil, or criminal liability. And I went all the way down to number 6. And I know the fact that it said in the objective of the bill, no safety recommendation made under this act shall be construed as assigning fault or determining civil or criminal liability. Speaker, standards, adherence to regulatory regimes, safety recommendations are all important ingredients in aircraft safety protocols in fledgling societies such as ours. But Mr. Speaker, this afternoon I want to take about 10 minutes and be very brief. Use a very practical approach to my presentation and yield the remainder of my time to the young member for Exuma and the Ragged Islands constituency. And my approach is simply go along these lines: Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority Bill 2019. Mr. Speaker, as a formerly Island Member of Parliament who returned from Central Andros just this morning, we've got to take a step back and look at what generally leads to these aircraft incidents, especially related to family islands. The preliminary occurrences, and generally in our communities we have an aunt, an uncle, a brother, or some well-known or renowned pastor or civic leader who generally falls sick or ill in the evening or at nighttime. Because of the fear and the concerns, normally family members would either ask if there's a local pilot on the ground in the communities, or if there's one they know in New Providence, and maybe getting late in the afternoon, if they can get clearance in the family violence, sometimes even taking risk, would ask an aircraft to go and pick up a loved one in the family islands. But before one were to get to the prospect of having an accident, before that family member were to get their family member to New Providence for a better level of health care, they have to find the necessary funding first and foremost. Cousins calling around to auntie and uncle, or a shopkeeper in the local settlement or community, be it Bowensang or Kemps Bay or Little Harbour and Mangrove Key. And even before you get there, Mr. Speaker, there's another concern that I have, and I wish the member for Elizabeth was here, that is ambulatory services in the family islands, where persons are still being taken from accident sites and the clinics on the back of trucks and vans in the family islands today, in the 21st century Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I said, if you bear with me, I'll have a very practical approach to accidents and in situations like this in the family islands. On top of that, there's not, in my view, sufficiently trained medical professionals and technical personnel in many of our family islands. Fortunately for us in the South and Mangrove Key District, I want to say thanks to our nurses primarily, who've done a very good job in their own way in primary care. We've been asking for some time to have CPR training, and there have been those who've been asking for defibrillators in these communities. Still can't have them. So, Mr. Speaker, we move on quickly to another issue before we were to get to the accident, while we're asking whether we will ask the member for Bamboo Town to make a small contribution for a plane to go to Congo Town, or you'll help us pay for the plane when the plane gets back in New Providence. Another thing that happens in the family islands, and I think members of the family islands would recognize this, except you're not in Exuma or the Abacos, There are no ATM machines in a lot of our family island districts. So people got a couple dollars, or some would say a level of disposable income, but they can't access it. I would have written to the Bank of the Bahamas over 10 years ago, asking for ATM machines to be placed in my district. Not even to get a response after writing a second time in the farm. And you're talking about a community 10 minutes away from New Providence. And people in my community this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, still have got to leave Central Andros in the main through the week to go to North Andros and Scotia Bank. There's no ATM machine in South Andros this afternoon, 16 to 18 minutes away from the city of Nassau on New Providence Island. It's a shame. Then there's a high cost of airlift healthcare for the city. We've had all the discussions about healthcare costs and who can go and get people, and many persons would try to use their cousin-in-law at the General Aviation Department. I know the member for Freetown wouldn't like this too much, but many times, as a family island representative, all you can do is ask your cousin sometime to pick up your mommy who may be having some real asthmatic attack. We simply call it down home shortness of breath, and you're concerned. She's 70 or 80 odd years old. You are now start thinking with proper care, because you may be able to go to doctors or maybe go to Life and Cure or go to PMH. They don't have that same opportunity in the family islands. This is real talk. So, Mr. Speaker, this happened over the years, man. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the real situation that exists in our country this afternoon. So, Mr. Speaker, the reality is where we are, these accidents occur because of these challenges we face in the family islands. Well, the Christie administration would have had the foresight to put lights on all the airstrips in the family islands. It was a great day. Prior to this development, for years, there would have been the use of trucks and vans and cars along the airstrips for landing purposes at night, especially in the family islands. I must note the fact that as we note the developments in the airline industry and the aircraft accident and investigation prospective bill that is being before us, that we're going to make legislation today, pardon me, Mr. Speaker, that this afternoon a colleague of mine, fellow broadcast colleague of mine, whose name I would not reference this afternoon, still is aggrieved this afternoon because of the alleged unfortunate passing of her son, just miles of the island community of New Providence. Unfortunately, the issue of rescue and recovery still is something that we are grappling with in the 21st century Bahamas. Closure to these matters, Mr. Speaker, is very difficult. Bahamians far and wide have been asking, what has the Bahamas been doing over the years when it comes to functional cooperation with the U.S. and other developed governments in training of our local professionals at a higher level, for instance, in areas such as these? It is all well and good for us to come in this place and talk and have the technical capacity and the brain thrust, for example, from Mr. Speaker. People want to hear about the real people who could make things happen when something maybe tragically would have occurred within their family or in the general populace of our society. And they've been asking questions such as, I've heard the discussions at funerals and family get-together in social and civic settings. What is happening with the developments with our defense force and police force, marine units, and functional cooperation with other such agencies and maybe in other NGOs? If we look at our country, the amount of airlines that are landing at LPIA daily, Georgetown, Freeport, Bimini, Fresh Creek, Marsh Harbor. We should at this stage, Mr. Speaker, as we talk about aircraft accident investigation and authority, have manpower and personnel who could not only technically investigate what's happening on the land, as we call it the dry land, but also be able to assist in a more meaningful way with recovery at sea. And this is a major concern about the capacity to respond thereto. The preservation of evidence, protection of records, reopening of investigations are all concerns addressed in this bill. But the practical reality is that Bahamian people are tired of us just simply passing legislation, creating what they call further or bloated bureaucracies, and creating, like a lady told me downtown during the lunch break the other day, creating what they call more necktie jobs, but the real jobs are not getting done. We need real manpower to accompany this piece of legislation. We must have real search and rescue missions, remember, for Freetown to make these things happen, to make our people have a level of comfort in what we're doing in this place. Professionally trained. And Bahamian people don't want to hear after we would have had the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority bill passed maybe today, that you still got to wait for what we call day clean in the Bahamian vernacular to go back and continue research. The search, and rescue, so that they can get some answer and some closure to their concern. No one is saying that the Bahamian professional or those who they may be working with in a functional way should put their life at peril or at risk. But people are tired, Bahamian people, by and large, are tired of the talk. They want action. Like I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, this is the Yuletide season. Let's be practical. Let's bring some real relief to our people. They are in the aircraft. This morning I was on the plane and the winds are out in the southwest, I guess it is. It was pretty bumpy this morning, and I'm not a man who like playing. My party leader could vouch for that. So all I'll be saying is, Master, speak, thy servant hear it. As the plane rocked a bit this morning going into Preston, when it started lipping and feeling it. But he doesn't hold on until it really gets bad. I would be holding on at the outset. But the reality is that for Central Andros, Mr. Speaker, and it's about to wrap things up, and I told you I would yield my time to the young, hard-working member for Exuma. The fact of the matter is that for Central Andros, Mr. Speaker, my people just simply want to have the bridge in Fresh Creek, improvement to the airport so that they could be freed of the prospect of having these accidents occurring in Fresh Creek like we saw the other day in Black Point, having the ramp improved, and the prospect of improved one new terminal in the Fresh Creek community, something done or some word about the Lighthouse Club in Fresh Creek, Andros, Freetown. Give us some good news during this Yuletide season, this Advent season on the Lighthouse Club. Bring some relief to Central Andros. They're depending on you, Freetown. If you wouldn't look at, if you know what I have, I'm going to use a dichotomized approach to how I'm going to present this. Listen closely. Thank you very kindly. South Andros and Central Andros. Once again, the road works from Andros Town Airport to Coakley Bight must be considered. Quickly to Mangrove Key, as I promised I would be very brief. It would bring them much joy during this Yuletide season if we can hear about the works on the clinic in Mangrove Key, Mr. Speaker, which could be coupled with not having the prospect of having to fly plane at night and having to run risk to bring your auntie or uncle or your cousin to Nassau because they're falling sick. Still no doctor. Thanks to the nurses, I want to say thanks to Nurse Senika Saunders, who would have served in the community of South Andros, and to Senior Nurse Valderrain, Raming, and South. We by the Church of God of Prophecy on Sunday past with Apostle Joshua Roll and Administrator Janita Ingram, as we said, thanks to them. In Mangrove Key, just adjacent to the community where I would have been born and the member for Bamboo Town, who now serves as the minister and has carriage of this great area, for example, they would simply want cable television that I've written to Cable Bahamas about. The record would reflect that I've stood in this place and asked for cable television for my district now from 2007 for some 57 times. Asked for cable television and proper cabling of my community. Dredging of the harbors and resurfacing of the dock in Lisbon Creek. Port of entry status on Mangrove Creek. Quickly for South Andros, as the member for Freetown reminded me. Let's bring some joy to the world for Brian and Sarah Does at the new resort, formerly the Emerald Palm. Let's pave the roads as visitors are now beginning to come, and there's life coming to South Andros. Improvement at the Kongotang International Airport Terminal. Upgrading the administrators complex, which was the gem, according to the former Prime Minister Hubert Alexander Ingram. South Andros complex inspired him 40-odd years ago when he went there. And so I am saying to him, he should have been here, Carmichael should have been here. And I am saying that we are hoping to have major works done at the administrators complex and about potable water continued. Remember for Long Island, I did not say anything behind your back. I want to say thanks. I heard that some of the equipment are arriving. But having a BTVI program for the improving of our young people in South Andros, BDC services improved, and once again for South Andros, our hometown, cable in the district. But at the end of the day, before I leave quickly, Mr. Speaker, nothing would bring more joy than having title for land in the communities of Andros. Our people want title for land. They could improve their homestead, improve their community. They can go to the banks with a clear title, and they could borrow a couple dollars to keep their homes looking well. Let's give the people for Christmas, give them some real joy, man. Give them some real joy. We need to give the people land. Give them some real joy. Let them sing joy to the world. The Lord has come. We've now got titles for land where they can go to the bank feeling biggity as ever and feeling good about themselves, being empowered. Let's give the people their land. Aircraft Accident Investigation Bill 2019 is critical. And I must say that we support, in no small way, this piece of legislation.
That's the land for the
Family islanders, Mr. Speaker, such as mine, in Central, Mangrove Key, and so on, just need to feel a part of the governing process in this country. For example, let me just draw a small illustration before I take my seat. I had this as a side note, Mr. Speaker, and I know the fact. I shared the stage last Friday. I'm feeling good in my spirit right now. I joined the member for North and the Berry Islands just a few nights ago for the Christmas celebration with the Christian councils in that community. And we sang on the stage together, "Oh Holy Night." And I think I nipped him out by about 2 decibels. You know? But he has a little high note he could hit now and then. But what's interesting, Mr. Speaker, as I'm driving, and I just remember for Carmichael, we're here, and remember for Kalani. Remember for Kalani likes to claim Calabash Bay. Remember for Carmichael claims the Garden City of Andros, Stanyard Creek. South Beach, this is a crying shame. I am going South Beach into North Andros with administrator and the government Jeep. The lights are on. Great road going into North Andros. Remember for North Andros, you know what I'm going to say, but I ain't going to hit him. They have great roads, but also all of the reflectors and all the streets are properly, all the cat eyes are all over the street. Now, why would the cat eyes stop at Stafford Creek Bridge and not come into my constituency? And so I am saying, all the good road I got straight from Stafford Creek Bridge now, Southern Shores, straight into Androstown International Airport. You tell me the cat eyes couldn't reach from Stafford Creek Bridge to Androstown Airport? Remember for Freetown, would have been to Kamali Miki over and over again. And see no cat eye ain't down that big.
Yeah, there's cat eyes there.
And the cat eye allows you to go a little faster because you know where the roads are going in the Family Islands. So all I'm saying, for the member for Carmichael, I know you're the Minister of Works and you're watching, I'm telling you right now, put the cat eyes in my constituency. Label the roads. All over Andros needs the same thing. North and North, you don't separate North from South. It's all North, Central, South, and Mangrove Key. All make up Andros. Mr. Speaker, on a high note I end. I'm feeling pretty good. Let's keep the lights on. Let's keep the planes flying on a timely basis. Let's see improved mailboat services where the people could have a little better bed for those who can't afford to come on, or some people don't like planes. Let's get better mailboat services. For example, let's revisit the whole issue of healthcare in the Family Islands, especially in the community of Mangrove Key, where there's no sense of hope about the clinic in Mangrove Key, and Reverend Smith and Reverend Dr. King and others, and Mangrove Key, and Chief Counselor Keith Robinson and others are very concerned this afternoon. So we can have better health care in our family islands and the good placement of good medical professionals in our family islands. Let the family islands, Mr. Speaker, during this Yuletide season, let them fly like eagles, as we do here. Let them feel a part of this process. Let them feel real joy, some sense of hope, collective hope during this Yuletide season. So I take my seat, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the great people of Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros. Let's build a safer, cleaner, prosperous, and caring Bahamas the days we have left in the 2019, in the 2020 and beyond. Once again, we support this piece of legislation, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority Bill 2019, and may our planes that are flying through the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and beyond all have safety and stick to their safety protocols as they fly, as we continue to have it and ascribe to the notion that it's always better in the Bahamas because God simply lives in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of a grateful people of the communities of Mangrove Key, Central and South Andros, and Freetown by extension, I would say thank you very much, and may God, the Almighty, omnipresent, omniscient one, continue to build the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. God bless you, and thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for South Beach.
Honourable Speaker, the Honourable Member for South and Central Andros mentioned BTVI. I wish to confirm for the Honourable Member that for South Andros, BTVI is on the way, sir.
Mr. Speaker, put my hand behind my back. On behalf of the grateful people, we are much obliged, and we say thank you to the member for South Beach, and you will give me good news when I return on the 14th for the real great Christmas celebration at the government complex overlooking the bluff in South Andros. Thank you very much, sir. We are grateful.
As many, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Isles.
Mr. Speaker, I should like to begin by thanking Almighty God for this another opportunity to stand in this place and to represent the people of the great Golden Isles constituency. Mr. Speaker, I should like to preface my remarks by stating how important, how critical, how necessary this bill is, and certainly to support it. But however, Mr. Speaker, my noble duty as the Member of Parliament for the Golden Isles constituency is to ensure that the executive arm of the government never, ever get away scot-free with neglecting the needs and the wants of the voters, particularly of the Golden Isles constituency. My duty is to remain ever diligent to ensure that the social, economic, and the political plight of voters in Golden Isles is not only brought to the attention of the Parliament and the executive, but also that it's acted upon. So, Mr. Speaker, my perspective as regards to this aircraft accident investigation and authority and regulations bill, which, of course, as we're nearing the ending of this year, intend to pass this bill, to see that is spoken to in the context of the total social, economic, and the political plight of the members, the voters in Golden Isles. Immediately, Mr. Speaker, I am painfully aware of the economic plight of thousands of Bahamians including hundreds in Golden Isles, who, because of ever-increasing taxes and inflationary practices, cannot afford to buy even an airplane ticket to anywhere. These economic challenging times are rough, and so rough that many voters are hard-pressed to sometimes even find bus money to get to and from work, let alone purchasing airline tickets. Again, Mr. Speaker, with reference to this bill, Mr. Speaker, I can recall the air tragedy of the persons that were flying to San Salvador, of which a very good friend of mine, the late Nat Williams, was on. All of them suffered. It was fatal for all. Mr. Speaker, I could recall the air tragedy the member from Mangrove Key, South and Central Andrews spoke of our former colleague, who is still in bereavement over that incident. Mr. Speaker, as one who has traveled to most of our family of islands and who have traveled through what we call the chartered section of the airport, Mr. Speaker, many times didn't know who you were flying with, but you just hope to God it was the right person and they'll get you there, and obviously they got us there. Mr. Speaker, many a times I had to say, guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold us
And me safely where I'm going.
with your powerful hands, because it got kind of bumpy up there, Mr. Speaker. And I'm a big man. They said big people land hard. And so, Mr. Speaker, there were times folk were looking to me for prayers, and I was trying to look at them for prayers, and I had to act as if I really was praying, but Lord knows I was kind of scared, Mr. Speaker. Oh man, God is good. Oh yes. And so I'm saying that to say this, is that I understand the importance of this bill. It's just that, Mr. Speaker, I am so concerned about the misery index of our country and what our people are going through. Mr. Speaker, where Bahamians are beginning to feel as if we are the minority in this country, begin to feel as if we're the foreigners in this country. I don't know why the cab driver came to me. He said to me that, Miller, I have a plate for someone who's not a Bahamian, and I have to pay every week for the plate. He said, a Miller plate renting is illegal, but I got to rent this to at least make a living for my family. And I'm trying to ask him, why are you telling me this? But Mr. Speaker, the challenges economically, financially, that our people are going through, the level of oppression that's resulting in level of depression among our people, Mr. Speaker, concerns me greatly. So, Mr. Speaker, it is impossible, it's challenging to have a sensible talk with constituents about Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority in a vacuum, leaving out the necessary legislative agenda of policies and measures to empower people economically to be able to buy a plane ticket and whatever else they may wish. Mr. Speaker, you see, the rich, the wealthy, and the affluent,
Talk, man. Tell them.
whoever they are, wherever they are, they don't feel the subtle increases in the price of food and clothes and medicine and the other daily needs. Take, for example, Mr. Speaker, the central bank's proposal to eliminate the 1 cent as legal tender currency at the end of 2020. In my opinion, Mr. Speaker, the potential that this has to contribute to a level of inflation that will affect the poorest people, making it even difficult for them to afford a plane ticket, and therefore making this bill before me less contextually relevant. Very important bill, but contextually speaking, it just makes it less relevant. Again, the rich, the wealthy, the affluent, whoever, wherever, would not feel the 1 and 2 cent changes in prices. But, Mr. Speaker, many of my constituents will. Mr. Speaker, when I voted against the increase in VAT from 7 to 12.5%, I did so because I painfully was aware of the sheer numbers of people that it would potentially affect negatively. And since then, Mr. Speaker, thousands more have joined the ranks of the economically depressed. And Mr. Speaker, of course, we made a decision to add, in my opinion, an additional tax on electricity, thus bringing a greater level of depression and increasing the misery index. It's going to be a difficult Christmas for many persons, Mr. Speaker. Many people will spend Christmas in darkness. They don't have electricity. On this very day, in our beautiful Bahama land, Mr. Speaker, while we sit here jesting and having some light moments and fraternizing, this very day, there are many Bahamians who could not afford breakfast, did not know where lunch was coming from, and do not have the means to boil hot water, Mr. Speaker, before they retire to a most uncomfortable bed under possibly a leaky roof. That's the reality for many in the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, but many persons are annoyed and dismissive when these issues are brought up. As elected officials, Mr. Speaker, and quite a number of persons have told me this. Maybe not in these terms, but the perception by many is that over the past 2 years, we were not as productive as we should have been as parliamentarians. Of course, cabinet meets regularly. Of course, we meet regularly. And of course, they always throw out to us of how long and unnecessary the breaks that we get. And I have to remind them that we are part-time legislators. But the perception is by many that we are unproductive. Many voters, Mr. Speaker, find it offensive and unacceptable that in the modern Bahamas that has real and pressing issues, economic and political pressures to contend with, that we as legislators seem to be insensitive and sometimes unproductive and do not take them seriously enough. Just the perception. This bill, Mr. Speaker, though critically important, in my opinion, is out of step with the majority of the Bahamian people who are on a forced march to poverty. The middle class is being shrinked. They're feeling the pressure. The class issues are real in this country. And Mr. Speaker, we do not take them serious. And we need to begin to take our people more serious. Bahamians are feeling marginalized. Bahamians are feeling left out. Bahamians are feeling oppressed. Bahamians are feeling as if we are taking them for granted. Mr. Speaker, again in the context of presenting this critically important bill at a time like this, when our economy has been shattered by Hurricane Dorian, that many voters believed that we should have been bogged down from morning until late nights, drafting legislations and proposals and projects, and serious debate as to how we are going to raise the employment level, how we are going to hold down inflation, how we are going to fight crime, to maintain public infrastructure and the public order, all at the same time helping to decrease the misery index. You're hurting, Mr. Speaker. While we are doing better economically, we're hurting this House. Should be a beehive, passing laws and working us to help, to bring relief, more relief to the Bahamian people. As a result, Mr. Speaker, these individual bills coming 1-1 out of the blue, many having no synergy, no ramifying positive effect, no real relevance to the urgency and the matters that's facing our people. Again, though important, very important. Just the timing. And this time, when we say 'tis the season to be jolly, there are many Bahamians who will not be jolly. And so while I support this bill, I just wish, Mr. Speaker, we had done some other things to help bring relief to our people who so desperately need it. So again, I thank the people of Golden Isles for giving me this opportunity to speak on their behalf. And I thank Almighty God, Yahweh Elohim, and may He continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and make the wealth common. Long live the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Golden Isles rest.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for the Exumas and Ragged Island.
I have 20 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, thank you. On behalf of the people of Exuma and Ragged Island, I'm grateful always for the opportunity to speak on their behalf. Mr. Speaker, whilst I'm grateful for the time deferred to me by the member for South Andros, I don't think I will need it today, as I intend to be very brief. I would be delighted, however, when we come to the discussion on the fiscal strategy report, if I might have that occasion for an extra 20 minutes.
That's a good one.
Mr. Speaker, Angliston has laid out our position very clearly, and we support the bill. However, I am very interested that this legislation and its broader impact on the aviation industry, impact on pilots of small and medium-sized crafts, on their businesses and their passengers. This bill comes in the wake of the recent tragic flights that many of our members have referred to today. We remember the fallen, and we offer prayers that their families will receive closure. We all watched in pain one of the more recent tragedies where family members watched in dismay as matters unfolded in the national media and as many scrambled to explain the recovery or lack thereof. For many in the family islands, we find proper charters to and from the islands to be a way of life, Mr. Speaker. The member for Southern Central Andros spoke to it. And many times, Mr. Speaker, there's what we call hacking. And many persons do it to provide for their families and to provide consistent travel opportunities to many of the less serviced areas. It is a way of life for many in the family islands, but people want to know that they and their loved ones are safe when they board these crafts. And therefore, we welcome any opportunity to provide further regulation. They want to know with great confidence that there are those behind the scenes checking when they are too busy to do so or when they are not trained to do so. Bahamians have a right to feel that their government is looking out for them, and the regulators are seeking to protect them from service providers who may not be properly equipped or properly trained, or who may not have the wherewithal to provide the business that they seek to do. And Bahamians have a right to be rescued when they find themselves in crisis. And they must be able to depend on their government to rescue them when they find themselves in these unfortunate circumstances. They want to know that if, God forbid, an incident does occur, there is a competent authority to figure out where they are and to get there timely. And if the worst is to occur, and their families can receive some closure, and that justice can be swift if necessary, the people want to depend on their government for these assurances. When we consider legislation in this place, we have to consider the greater good, but we also have to consider the impact on those who participate in the industries who are most vulnerable. One area where we want to see protection for those in the industry and to protect the integrity of this authority is where conflicts of interest may arise. The legislation details extensively where conflicts of interest might arise. This must be properly policed to international best practice, and its governance is critical. Mr. Speaker, this does beg the question of how we compose these authorities with competent people, with knowledge of the industry, who remain at arm's length with the industry. And I trust, Mr. Speaker, that we find those competent Bahamians and we do not look to the usual political cronies who might otherwise bring into question the independence and the competence of this supposedly independent authority. Those who work on airplanes with airlines and airports should be able, in my view, Mr. Speaker, to confidentially report any issue within a specific period of time. Those who work on airlines, with airlines, and at airports should be able to confidentially report through a system that can only be seen by investigators. A good model for this would be the FAA's safety reporting system. As a function of that system, pilots, air traffic controllers, flight attendants, mechanics, ground personnel, and others involved in aviation submit reports to the ASRS, that's the FAA's system, when they are involved in or observe an incident that may be detrimental to the safety and health of the flying public. And the FAA holds the reports in strict confidence. It boasts that though more than 1 million reports have been submitted, there has never been the breach of identity of anyone submitting complaints to the system. As with many other industries in the Bahamas, a lack of confidence in many of our systems presents or prevents whistleblowers and people who know from making reports of abuses. This often saves lives. Many times, we are painfully aware of bad apples in many of our industries, Mr. Speaker, and many times we fail to report them because of lack of confidence in our systems. Mr. Speaker, we must make this an industry standard and a standard in our country to encourage best practice. No doubt we will also need to beef up the ability of this authority to aid and assist in search and rescue. As we saw with recent downed flights and other incidences, we can learn from many of the mistakes. We should not allow these lessons to be squandered. In fact, in memory of those who suffered, we must ensure that their untimely sacrifice is not wasted. As a member of ICAO, we must draw on their expertise in a meaningful way, their established regulations, their ability for training, their best practices and protocols for regulation, search, and rescue. We could and should consider creating a special unit within the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and Police Force that could partner with the resources of the U.S. Coast Guard in pinpointing down aircrafts and assisting with search and rescue. These resources, of course, could be deployed in immigration and poaching matters during their downtime. Of the many lessons of Hurricane Dorian, it is that our military air capacity is sorely lacking. Quite frankly, it's troubling. There is a need for drones, and I repeat the call that we consider a more active use of drone technology. We know that these things cost money, Mr. Speaker, but I'd imagine that they will save lives, they will protect our industries, they will protect our resources, they will assist in the fight against the breach of our borders in relation to immigration, and importantly, they will assist with search and rescue. Mr. Speaker, oftentimes prevention is much better than trying to administer cures. Although this legislation addressed the functioning of this authority in terms of its response to incidents and accidents, I do think it prudent that we take this opportunity to set up a system through which the public and those in the industry can be better informed as to who should be operating in the industry. And I would recommend a list of approved pilots, a list of approved charters, technicians, and operators to be updated on a monthly basis on a website connected to the authority. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the media and public disclosure, I note that this legislation spends a considerable amount of time offering guidelines as to what is to be disclosed publicly about investigations. I fear that despite the guidance, some of the considerations of confidentiality might fly in the face of the Freedom of Information Act if it's ever to be brought into force by this administration. And the need for public awareness leading to public safety should outweigh the need to protect what those involved in the investigation believe should be kept a secret. The legislation also spent a long time explaining how information is to be disclosed to the media. And one of the tragedies that compounded the most recent tragedy in that ill-fated matter referred to earlier was the fact that the information appeared to not be properly communicated. The media sometimes gets it wrong. But we have responsible entities in this country that people look to streamline information and deliver it in a timely and responsible manner. And so, in the recent instance, there may have been scattered information which allowed there to be a breakdown in the level of trust in many of the entities who provide support in these matters. The legislation does a good job in recommending a spokesman be appointed to funnel information through to the media. A technically competent spokesperson trained in media interaction is required, Mr. Speaker, to ease the burden on families and the flying public when these incidences occur. People only really need to know the facts of these situations, and a coordinated response would be most welcome. In summary, Mr. Speaker, as the member for Engliston outlined, we do support the bill. But in general, I'd like to speak of a few general issues impacting Exuma and impacting the aviation industry. Firstly, let me speak about air ambulances. From what I understand, the air ambulance service for Family Islands is currently monopolized. It is my sincere hope and cry that this comes to an end sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
The member for Central and South Andros spoke to the need for transport in the dead of night when there is a crisis of our family in the Family Islands. It is inefficient and it is inconvenient for us to wait for a carrier to come from Nassau to Exuma or to Long Island to pick up someone in crisis when there are planes on the ground with pilots on the ground who can be equipped, who can be properly trained, and who can comply with regulations. The time wasted waiting for that airplane from Nassau can save lives. Mr. Speaker, I make no comment about the efficacy of the current service or its provider, and I cast no aspersions on anyone. But let me be extremely clear. What I am saying is that this needs to be liberalized and open to other competent and licensed individual air service providers. The status quo cannot remain. It hampers opportunities for entrepreneurs. It potentially causes lives, Mr. Speaker. This, Mr. Speaker, this would ensure that there is sufficient services on Family Islands that would allow for timely transport. Once we are at it, the member for Elizabeth and the Minister of Health, when he returned, might also speak to the great need for the mini hospital in Exuma to become fully functional. When I tour this facility and I see all of the modern equipment, it pains my heart that it sits there becoming obsolete when it could provide an essential, much needed service, not just to Exuma, but to the southern and central Bahamas. And whilst those repairs and whilst those resources materialize, why can't we go back to my point of providing the opportunity for others to participate in the air evacuation service? Mr. Speaker, I have said before that Exuma can be a hub, a healthcare hub, to lessen the traffic to Nassau and to lessen the traffic to the Princess Margaret Hospital. We rush patients from the Family Islands to PMH, and they wait for hours, Mr. Speaker. Hours. Whilst we have good quality facility in the island of Exuma, only needing resources. We ask this government to take advantage of this low-hanging fruit and provide the resources necessary to use this hospital to the benefit of the Bahamian people to save lives. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I call for Exuma to be the aviation hub for the South and Central Bahamas. We envisage using Bahamas Air more effectively and more efficiently. And you know, Mr. Speaker, the member for Freetown, in his private sector days, used to have a lot to say about this. He had a lot to say about Bahamas Air, how we can make it more efficient and how we can use it more effectively, how we can bring tourists from all of the hubs in.
There's a reason why you're on silent on it. You get over here. What's that?
I hear Freetown, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy to hear that he's finding his voice on this issue, Mr. Speaker. He's finding his voice. But if we can get Bahamas Air to take tourists from Nassau and USA and Canada to Exuma, and then we can get the small commuter airlines transiting those passengers to Long Island and Auckland and Michael and other areas in the central. This will create opportunities for entrepreneurship in this space. It will boost economic activity in the central and southeast Bahamas. And it will create a more buoyant industry of aviation. And I invite my friend from Freetown not to lose his voice on this issue. And yes, I am biased. The hub should be Exuma. Not just that I am the Member of Parliament for Exuma, but it's strategically positioned to be the hub for aviation in the central and south Bahamas. Fourthly, Mr. Speaker, I ask the member for Freetown to tell the people of Exuma when we're going to break ground for our new airport and when it will be completed. The member for Angliston pointed out that this airport has been in the pipeline for quite some time. And I do know there's been some work done recently. But we are waiting for this new economic inflow to Exuma. It's stifling our economic growth. We can do more. We're contributing positively to national growth in the country. We want to do more, and we ask the minister responsible for aviation to move this along by letting the people of Exuma know when this will start and when it's projected to be completed.
Let them breathe.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, there was much fanfare about this airplane registry some time ago. I believe it was during a budget debate where some on this side accused the government of cronyism or nepotism or something untoward by exempting airplanes and helicopters and airplane parts and helicopter parts.
You're good.
And many jumped to their feet to defend this as a precursor to the development of an airplane registry. Sounded beautiful, beautiful, Mr. Speaker. And therefore I ask the minister responsible to speak to this, let the public know what's happening in this regard to ensure that we can further develop this industry. As an archipelago, we have an awesome opportunity to be the model for modern, buoyant aviation matters. We can set a standard for the region, Mr. Speaker, and therefore I invite the member for Freetown to continue his enthusiastic and his bombastic interventions with respect to the aviation industry. Yes. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I know I said finally before, but I gotta say finally once more.
You got like your colleagues that are right.
It was with great dismay when I spoke with the chief counselor responsible for the Exuma Keys, and he indicated to me that he had a total of $2,000 in his local government budget to maintain 3 airports in the Exuma Keys for the year. This included the airports of Staniel Key, Black Point, and Farmers Key. This included maintenance on the terminals, maintenance of the curbsides, Mr. Speaker. For 3 airports, $2,000 in local government budget.
Don't sit up loud like that.
We are disrespecting local government professionals. There's no better way for me to put this. We're disrespecting local government professionals. We're making them look bad. They're enthusiastic about their role. They want to do a good job. We must give them the resources to do it. We must empower them. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I say thank you to the people of Exuma and Ragged Island. And I invite them to come out on the 15th of December on an invitation of the Baptist community when I will speak on sustaining a prosperous Exuma. 7 p.m. on December 15th at the E.C. McKinsey Memorial Auditorium, where we will speak about vision for Exuma and the future of a sustained and prosperous Exuma. The people of Exuma are grateful to be able to be a net job provider for the Bahamas. We are grateful to be a net positive economic growth provider for the country. And we want to do more. And we will. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? recognizes the honorable member for North Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, members of this honorable House, I do take delight in having the opportunity to speak to this bill and the significance of it and how it will enhance the aviation industry in this country. But first let me say happy belated Mother's Day to my wonderful mother, Cecily Mackey, who I say belated because I spent the day with her on Sunday on her birthday. And all of my siblings were able to express their love and admiration for her at Wesley Methodist Church. But I didn't get up and say anything. And so even though everybody had shared their love and admiration, she expected her son to say something. And so I say it now. Happy Mother's Day, Miss Jester Lee. Happy birthday. And Mother's Day again. I also want to thank my wife, who's been very instrumental in holding the mantle for our family, or for my family, in Harbor Island, while I've been very much involved in my parliamentary responsibilities. It's a yeoman's task, and she has done it while at the best of our ability. I have no complaints because no one could have done it better. And so, Ms. Cindy, I say thank you. Mr. Speaker, allow me a few minutes to talk of an incident that occurred on Sunday. I had the unfortunate situation to have to rush my daughter to Nassau for a medical situation. And while all of this has relevance, because all of my Family Island colleagues spoke of how it's so important to be able to access aircrafts to travel to New Providence for medical attention. And I say it ties together because if our aviation equipment is not properly maintained, and if steps are not taken to mitigate accidents, you can easily see how one tragedy can lead to another. And Mr. Speaker, I also understand the passion that which the member for Golden Isle spoke in reference to how a lot of our less fortunate in this country, the challenges they face and what they go through, and the inability to access some of the basic needs for their survival. And while I do not seek to blame anyone, F&M, PLP, DNA, for the state to which we are in, I understand what so many of our regular citizens of this Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, what they have to go through. Like I indicated, I brought my daughter down for a medical because of or illness, and I went to the Princess Margaret Hospital, and I was forward thinking, so I called to see if I could be assisted and having her dealt with. And Mr. Speaker, I understand the overwhelming situation at Princess Margaret and the many people that they have to serve and try to expeditiously deal with those persons who are challenged with the various sicknesses that they're faced with. I get that. But Mr. Speaker, I think the time frame and waiting for persons to see physicians are far, far too long. Mr. Speaker, and while that may be a result of the amount of persons that have to be seen by physicians, I can understand that, Mr. Speaker. I get that because I know it's a numbers game. And game may be a bad word to use, but what I mean by that, because of the amount of persons that have to be seen by the amount of doctors that are available, it's time consuming. But what I don't get, Mr. Speaker, is the attitudes of some of the staff there. Now, they may be overworked, Mr. Speaker, but that does not take away from the manner in which you deal with these patients. A smile goes a long way. Looking at persons and being understanding to their cause and speaking to them politely. That makes people more comfortable. You are already fatigued and stressed by the illness or the sickness that you are plagued with. And now to be kind of just rushed aside or gathered in a heap like sheep, it's not a good thing, Mr. Speaker. And I just could not get up in this place today, Mr. Speaker, and not address that issue. And I'm not saying that they're all like that, because I want to point out something, Mr. Speaker, that there was a young lady there that was very, very cordial and only attempted to assist, only to be overruled by one of our superiors in such a negative way. And all I did was I looked at her, I nodded, and I said, I understand. But this is not just that problem at the hospital. It seems to be a countrywide situation where we seem to not to be able to provide good service, Mr. Speaker. Our attitudes on how we address our customers and our people. I had a similar complaint on Saturday at one of the hotels in Harbor Island, where a guest was able to point out, and he said, I'm not saying that to complain. He said, but you know, there's a need for persons who are in this industry to smile more, to interact, to speak to your people, to make them feel comfortable, call them by name. No, my good friend, it's not a government fault. But it's a cultural, I said cultural. And that is why we all have to involve ourselves. But in instances where it's a government institution, we could provide refresher courses. We could get Bahama Host to become more involved because it played a pivotal role in the past. And that is all I seek to do here, is to add light to this situation, that as we go forward, that we could address how we deal and interact with our people. Well, some of us are fortunate. After waiting for such a long period of time, I decided I was not going to put up with it, and I went over to doctors.
But not everybody is in that position. And I realize that. And I said it ties in now because it has to do with service. But on a brighter note, Mr. Speaker, well, Christmas is about green and reds and other bright colors. Oh, gold is there too. Gold is very much there. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But I want to talk about something positive. I want to talk about a young man, Mr. Speaker. And permit me just I want to talk to a couple of things that relate to my constituency, Mr. Speaker. There's a young man named Will Simmons, who hails from Arbor Island. And he started a school called the Green School. And he is flanked by some individuals who were very much involved with him when he had an organization called Space to Create. And every summer, he would take all of the students in the neighborhood and teach them different types of science and about the environment and cleaning up in your neighborhood. Well, he's now started a school called the Green School, Mr. Speaker. And I was amazed to be there because they had a Thanksgiving service where all of the children came out and they talked about our environment and how important it is to keep our environment clean. That too has something to do with regulation. That has something to do with us coming together and dealing with the resources that we have. And so I just want to send a shout out to Mr. Will Simmons, that we are very, very proud of the accomplishments that you are making. Mr. Speaker, I chair Nassau Flight Services. I take that as a compliment coming from my minister. We are moving in that direction. We have offset a lot of the subsidies that we've had to. And and while I've spoke about the major contribution that Nassau Flight Services did during Hurricane Dorian, I want to repeat that some $600,000+ and donated services were provided by Nassau Flight Services. We've got corporate citizens, major corporate citizens, that cannot match those figures. And to them, I say thanks. I also want to thank the board of Nassau Flight Services, who have done a stellar job in getting us to move in the right direction. Now, many people know that the government had undertaken an exploratory measures to look at the privatization of Nassau Flight Services. And it has caused some concern by some of the staff because they don't know the plight or what direction it's going to go. All I'm saying to you at NFS, let's continue to perform and do what we have done and moving it in the right direction. And I am quite certain whatever decision is made, it'll be in the best interest of the staff of NFS and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, this bill that was brought here today, dealing with accident and investigation and its authority, is very important and it's timely. And most of our Family Island members of Parliament have spoken to how it impacts us. I too travel frequently from Eleuthera to Nassau. I travel just about every week. And it is important that the necessary steps are taken to ensure that persons that jump on those planes, that they can travel with a degree of safety and relaxation and not worrying that whether or not if they're going to get there. Some of my recent colleagues who spoke about the recent deaths that took place as a result of flights, I know the pilots of both of those planes, and I've flown with both of them on several occasions. And so I understand what could have possibly happened. I could have been on one of those ill-fated planes. And that is why every step and every measure should be taken to ensure that accidents such as those do not occur. That is why we must do everything that is necessary to ensure our friendly skies are safe. The aviation industry plays a very pivotal role in the economic life of the Bahamas. We know we get more passengers in this country by the cruise ships, but we know that money spent by passengers that come in by airline spend more. And it is an industry that we must protect. I had an opportunity to speak with one of the hoteliers in my constituency just this morning, who indicated that there's a little uneasiness of those persons in the hotel industry because their bookings seem to have taken a major hit. And is of the view that we must address what appears that some persons believe that the hurricane, the damage that was done by Hurricane Dorian, that persons are getting the wrong message. And when I say persons, I'm talking about our tourists. Because you see, a lot of people believe that the Bahamas is one landmass. And for many years, we've just promoted Nassau and Paradise Island. And so when a lot of visitors or when a lot of persons, potential clients that want to come to the Bahamas, when they've seen all of these scenes of this ravished Abaco and East Grand Bahama, they start to, and if they're not made aware that that is only those areas, you can see why they will now to start to form an attitude that, well, I'm going to bypass the Bahamas this year. And that's a conversation I've been having with quite a few people. And so I say to my minister, I think that is something that we may now need to address. I know we've been doing it because I've been doing it. And a lot of our travels, we've been telling persons that there's still 14 more destinations to come to. But I'm worried and I'm concerned that that message may not have fully gotten out to our potential clients. And so this is something that we all must involve ourselves in, because loss of revenue is the last thing we need now. But I am glad that the measure that we now take to deal with this bill is to make sure when the opportunity exists for persons to come here, we know that they will arrive safe, comfortable, and would be able to enjoy our sun, our sand, and our seas. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I'm quite certain that North Luther supports this bill. And while we're on the aviation on this matter as it relates to aviation, it would be remiss of me not to take this opportunity to speak to the need for us to move rapidly in the establishment of the new North Duluth Airport. Angliston said she wants to see the shovel in the ground. Exuma said he wants to see the shovel in the ground. But trust me, we in North Duluth wants to see it even more. Because now North Duluth is the second busiest airport in the Bahamas. I'm sure about that, Exuma. Now, yes, now this present minute. And so it would be a travesty of justice. It would be a travesty of justice if we don't correct this problem with this airport that we have in North Duluth, where our guests have to be on the outside, in the front, outside, in the back, over by Sands, over by Stewart's. Let's move, Minister. You know I did with you. North Duluth is with you. And I'm ready to shovel sand. In fact, I want to do more than shovel sand. We're ready to pour concrete. And I'm of the view, and you know this, that the steps we're taking, I think, are not fast enough. We've got to pick up the slack for Abaco. We've got to pick up the slack for West End. I'm sorry, East End. Well, West End too. This is a time, this is a crucial time when monies are hard to get, and I'm aware of that. But with the development of the area and the release of crown land to our people, which is another issue, we can do more. My good friend South Beach will give me all the teachers that I need. The problem is I can't find apartments or houses to rent. Our challenges are, once we can get what we need, we can help to offset the shortfalls that we now experience because of the Abacos and the East Grand Bahama. Let's pull them all together, Mr. Speaker. Let's get all that we need so that we can move forward. North Duluth supports this bill, and North Duluth stands ready, willing, and able to assist in whatever capacity that is needed for us to move forward. North Duluth rests.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as previous speakers on this side would have indicated, we support this bill. There's some time that sometime in the making. The challenge small island development face out most countries is the question of, when you have operations such as in the in the aviation industry, you have matters that have to be investigated, you have matters that have to be prosecuted, and then at some point in time, the judgment has to be made. Very often, they all find themselves in the same silo. And that is repugnant to natural justice. Because at the end of the day, you are the investigator, you are the prosecutor, and you are the judge. And so the work began by the member for Englerston. I'm happy to see it's continuing. It was all not completed during our 5-year term, but as one could see, it does take a while for things to get done. As is illustrated by how long it's taking to formalize the arrangement that left in place for the Flight Information Region program from which revenues could be had. And we wait with bated breath to see how soon that could happen, because God knows that we need the revenue. Yeah, we did now. It's more, quite frankly, it's more than 45 years. We have to think. All we are saying is that I only draw that to your attention. No, we did it. No, the FIR, to go historically, the FIR process, commenced in about 2004, right? And it was being advanced. And then, of course, it was interrupted by the election of 2007. Then the then Prime Minister said it would never happen, could never happen. If we picked it back up in 2012, 2013, and it happened. Just a question of consummating it, consummate the arrangement that's in place, and then you will have that revenue that belongs to us. And what makes that important too, Speaker, is that that revenue is dedicated and can only be used for matters related to the aviation industry, like airports, and a critical component of the use of those funds is for rescue, for crash and rescue services, right? Crash and rescue services, and so we could enhance our ability. So right now, the responsibility for crashes and rescues and recovery in the aviation continues to rest with the FAA, because they collect our funds from which monies are supposed to be allocated for those purposes. And who collected? Anyhow, so Mr. Speaker, I'll be very brief on this. I've looked at the bill, and I just make one or two observations. And I invite, I hope someone is listening in the Attorney General's office to ask first, because one thing that's glaringly absent is how this authority is going to be funded. So when you create an authority, you check all the bills, and you set up an entity, check all of them. It speaks to how it's going to be funded. You know, either from whether the authority is going to be what I call an entity that's going to generate its own revenue. And if there's a shortfall in revenue, then would the consolidated fund be called upon to to supplement the cost of operating the entity, because because what you're doing. No, but it has to be specifically stated. It has to be funded. If it does, I'm just saying it's an observation. You check with the lawyers. Just check with you check with all the basically when you set up any authority, you have to set up how it's going to be funded, and that's absent. So your chief investigator, all those persons, and what you have done is you have assumed the department of the department in the ministry in civilization, the air accident investigation department. All right, and so you may have to consider how it is being funded. The other observation I make is this: that the 8B, I didn't see. It may. So, sorry, where's that? Hmm? Yeah, but that doesn't. It doesn't tell you about. Yeah. You have to. Yeah. You could, but you have to ensure that. There's a mechanism to ensure it. All I'm saying, I'm not advising. Perhaps you need to check to see whether that is sufficient. What is being said there, because to ensure doesn't necessarily mean that you will be able automatically to just allocate funds to it. All right, so maybe you may want to look into that. The other observation I make is that the under the Civil Aviation Act, Section 47, that allows the minister to make regulations as the one that you laid. Now, regulations were in fact laid in 2017. I think it was in February. These regulations were laid in relation to accident investigation. Now, one of the critical provisions in those rules, which was permissible under the Civil Aviation Act, was the provision, section Rule 12 of the rules, speaks to notice of investigators' report and representation. That is very critical to the notion of natural justice in dealing with investigations and compiling a report. There, my colleague from Engliston drew attention to the latest case that dealt with the issues of regulating accidents and investigation. But there is another case that, in fact, emanated from New Zealand, where there was an investigation on the Airbus crash, where about 200 persons were killed back in I think it was in the early 80s. And that investigation produced reports that impacted negatively a number of persons as to the cause of that accident. And those persons sued the authorities. It made its way to the Privy Council. And out of that case came a principle that I refer to as the Mahon principle. Now, the rules the Mahon principle, which says that where you're having these inquiries, that will produce a report. That report may make recommendations, have conclusions or findings that could adversely impact someone's reputation or otherwise. You ought to, before concluding that report, give that person the opportunity to deter the inquirer from making those findings or conclusions. That is very critical in these matters. Now, I pointed out because when you look at the proposed section section 24 and 25 of the Act, it seems to restrict the publication of the report to anyone other than to departments, states, and other organizations that participated in the investigation. And then, and 24.2 says that the authority shall not disclose any draft final report, either issued or received to the public. And so that is the section 24 that I think you probably need to revisit, because that is what the principal act is saying. When we pass it, that's what it'll say. Now that will fly in the face of Rule 12 that is presently in force, that requires a notice to be given to persons to whom the report may have some adverse effect. Right, and so if you look at the Rule 12 of the present rule, see, the present rule take into account 2017, it's Civil Aviation Investigation of Air Accident Incidents Regulations. Yeah, Rule 12. That prohibits an inquirer from making findings or conclusions against anyone that will adversely affect that person without giving that person notice of their intended findings. To give that person the opportunity to say, look, don't make those findings because here's some additional information, and or you may have put too much weight on this fact, or you have not taken into account this part of the evidence or information. And so as to avoid that person's reputation being affected by such findings. And so I invite you all to look at that, because once this law is passed, then that rule, specific rule, will be inconsistent with that provision. And therefore, persons, and the truth of the matter is that despite the fact that the Section 24 says that about draft report, once the final report becomes publicly available under Section 25, and I am adversely impacted by it, I go to the court and have those findings set aside, and it renders useless the exercise of which the investigators would have undergone. And so it may very well be we amend 24 just to include notice of the report and representation as is included in the rule. Yeah, the draft, not the final. Because the final is going to be made public. But once you make the final, once you make that public, it's going to contain, it may contain recommendations. Yeah, and so you might want to. Yeah. And the member for Angleston did draw attention to the restriction of why the investigators or experts are not compellable to give evidence in any civil or criminal proceeding if it is required. And if we are about justice and the administration of justice, and if it is truth we are pursuing, then we ought to allow these persons to give evidence in civil or criminal proceedings if required by either party. The parties may not require them, but if they're required, then they should be compellable, recognizing that they would have had investigated the matter, the subject matter for which those proceedings would relate, and they could be of great assistance to the justice of the case. And so we think you might want to visit that section as well. And with that, Mr. Speaker, the chairman of the flight services, that's not Luther. He's not Luther. Representative. Did he speak about his administrator or lack thereof, Bamboo Town? You are, okay, because I've been getting calls, and I would have thought he would have been getting calls too from North Lutra talking. Yeah, but he goes, she goes once in a while. She only goes. No, Speaker, what I say? There's a serious issue brewing, happening in North Lutra with the absence of an administrator. And the people are crying because they feel that they're being held hostage because they don't have the presence of someone who they could go to as an administrator to get things done. Yes, we know the director goes down, but she goes down once a month, I'm told. And sometimes she don't turn up because of her other duties. So you do not. Yeah, and you know better. No. Now, Minister, let's say this right. Do not stop allowing politics to interfere with the administration of these islands, right? I talk it. Yeah. So no. To the detriment of the residents in these communities. I'm a family island representative, and I know the necessity of having an administrator. Now, when you want to do what you have to do, just make sure there is an alternative arrangement in place. If you can move an administrator, we're not going to interfere with your policy decisions, whatever might undergird those decisions, but don't make a decision to deprive the residents of a community of an administrator unless you have a replacement. When you move one, put one there. Bring Cunningham back. Right? When you move one, put next one there.
All right? No, I'm not going to go there today. Yeah, I ain't going there yet. I'll talk to you first. You know, I talk to you first. But, I thought the member, no, I thought the North Lutra, representative might talk about it, but since he didn't, and he was right in the back of me, I decided, I feel compelled to do so. Yeah, and get some answer from you.
We work together over here, you know.
North Lutherans are waiting for your response because they sent me a note on it. So you could do that? Yeah. So it's the. I have to watch this. I have to watch the answer, you know. And yeah, I can lift up to the answer in a moment. So, Mr. Speaker. No, this is a serious business. We need not. What I'm putting on the record is, we're not going to interfere. Representations we made when administrations are being moved. Granted, it is still the decision of the government to move them when they want to move them. But what is important is that when you move an administrator, please ensure that one is in place. That's what's necessary. And North Lutherans are waiting to hear what you have to say about that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Freetown.
I don't need that. Mr. Speaker, it is with enormous delight that I report to the House that this has unanimous support of everyone in this House. This bill has been, and the accompanying regulations have been so well crafted and so well put together and so well researched that not even the member from Eglinton could vote against this. She supports it, and when I have her support, that has made my day. And now, it seems as if all of, with the possible exception of Cat Island, who had some very technical concerns, one or two technical concerns about the bill, and I gladly received them and will take them under advisement. You know, I'm not a QC. In fact, I'm not even a lawyer. I'm just a simple washhouse guy. So, and I don't know how to craft these bills, so I'll have to go back to my technical team, and they will advise me. I know that there was some references to the media and the fact that the bill was probably a little onerous on how one could report what one could report. And I only go back to the fact that this bill was substantially vetted and relied on by ICAO, and we used their Model Accident Investigation Authority Act. We used their Model Accident Investigation Authority regulations. We referred to the accident investigation legislation of Barbados, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and United Kingdom. And I'm sure that all of these paragraphs were analyzed and reanalyzed, and based on precedent and based on the technical advice provided by ICAO, I'm sure the bills and the paragraphs were crafted in the way that they have been crafted. But I will certainly go back and inquire about the concerns that have been raised. There were a whole host of other issues that were raised, and I will touch on them briefly, some of them political, some of them not. The first one was the airlift into the southern Bahamas. So in my 2 short years and 2.5 years in tourism, what I found is that airlift generally follows demand. So when you build demand, airlift follows. And certainly that has been the case here in Nassau. That has been the case in Exuma. That has been the case in Abaco before the Hurricane Dorian. When demand increased, all the foreign airlines started to come in, and we weren't required to provide them with any support. I understand your desire to grow the Southern Bahamas. That will obviously require additional subsidy. And when the good minister, or the good member from Cat Island, Rumkey in San Salvador, I believe he was in charge of Bahamas Air, when they bought the ATR-50s, those planes are often recounted to me by the executives of Bahamas Air just simply being too large and running too empty, especially to get into the Southern Bahamas. I know in Acklands and in Crooked Island, that's always an issue there. So that they say that the ATRs, especially the smallest one, which is a 50-seater, is really too large to service those islands. But I will go back to them. See, my strategy in running a business is I don't know nothing about airlines, right? And I think the biggest problem is us politicians come along and we start to run these airlines and start to tell them what to do. And that's why where they are today. And that's why they cost the state so much money, because we think we know what we're doing, but we really don't know what we're doing. And we come into them and we tell them how to run an airline business, and we don't know how to run an airline business. So I'm guided by their advice, and this is what they're telling me, but I will certainly pass along your concerns to them. With regard to the aircraft registry, we signed a contract on the 8th of November with Aircraft Registry Group, ARG, to really prepare us for the launch of an aircraft registry. You know, when we were audited in 2017, the score came in so low that we really felt that we couldn't launch the aircraft registry until we increased that score. And that is what we and then that is why we are, you know, this is Minister, I'll call you Minister, former Minister. Yeah, it is what we are going to do. We have to get that score up, and we brought on the technical assistance of people that have created aircraft registries before, and this is what they have guided us to do. With regard to hackers, we have issued a security directive requiring all persons going on the ramp now to have a badge. And one of the advantages of that is that we can vet to see, before issuing the badge, whether they've had the required medical, whether they have the required qualifications to engage in the type of business that they're doing, to provide some oversight to the area. Right now, or before we introduce the security directive, any pilot could go onto the ramp, jump on a plane, and off they go. And we found that to be one of the contributing factors for a number of the accidents that we had. So we have sought to address that matter, and the Bahamas Civil Aviation Authority has been very thorough in its approach on attacking that matter. So there's that. Increase in fees for security at the airports. We have decided to increase the security fee by $2 from $7 to $9 to cover the expense of acquiring new baggage screening and new passenger screening equipment. The baggage screening equipment at the Lyndon Pindling International Airport was creating a myriad of problems, and the airport authority advised me that that equipment was obsolete and needed to be replaced. And so we decided to increase the fee to cover the cost. I think it's about $10 or $11 million that will allow the airport authority to buy additional screening equipment. I think if a number of you who have checked in at LPIA sometimes, you get to the airport, this is on the U.S. departure side, and you get there and the machine isn't working, and then you got to tote the bags down to the very end, and then you got to line them up and get them through. This is a very vexing problem at the airport, and we have finally decided to address that problem by buying new equipment. But, you know, as with everything, new equipment costs money, and we decided to increase the fee to cover that cost, as well as to buy some additional fire trucks. We have a number of fire trucks, as I would have mentioned, that really need replacing. And so we decided to increase the security fee to cover that cost. As it relates to the airspace, I don't know, there seems to be a difference of opinion here. there's the flight information region, and there is the sovereign airspace. When I first came into office, I want you all to believe that I want more than anything in the world to monetize this airspace as quickly as anybody in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Because I know, and you know, that we should be earning money for planes flying through our airspace. And as I said before, I put in a call to ICAO. And the guy on the phone told me point blank, he said, I've been in this department of granting FIRs for the last 27 years. In the last 27 years, I've granted 3. 1 for Sudan, when Sudan split from Sudan and South Sudan. The other one was when Kuwait and Saudi Arabia having their spat, so they created another one for that. And the third one was for some tiny little country in the Pacific that had been going on and on and on and on and on. I think it took them about 15 years to get it accomplished. We've been at it for 45 years. And in that conversation, very interesting, hold it now, well, whatever, since independent. We've been independent for roughly 45 years. So the chap up at ICAO told me, he said, look, you have your sovereign airspace, which is different from an FIR. He said, you have your sovereign airspace. Now, you can charge anybody to go through your sovereign airspace. That's different from an FIR, a flight information region. We're not going to in any way create any more FIRs. That's what I tell you. So you can charge what you want to go through your sovereign airspace. And so that is what we have been pursuing to do. So, but I will talk to Eggleston afterwards, and you can advise me. But this is what the man at ICAO told me.
And the American says from the Declaration of Intent. Read it.
So I could go into that. I could go into that. I could go into that further. That's what they told me. I only can tell you what they tell me. I ain't lying.
Read the Declaration.
So one of the reasons why we extended the management agreement at NAD. Yeah. One of the reasons why we extended the contract at NAD is because, you know, the debt at NAD had been downgraded. Well, we all know why it was downgraded, because the country was downgraded, right? So the debt at NAD was downgraded. And I really have to commend the management team at NAD for doing their endeavor best to turn that around and to get the debt upgraded. So it was upgraded twice. And so, you know, when I saw how hard and how diligent that they worked at that, I extended, I said, you know, the time we got 1 more year to go. I said, you know what, let's extend this for another 10 years. And then, as you can imagine, hold it now, that airport has $530 million of debt. That's over $500 million, right? And the bondholders, to go through all that whole process of getting the approval of the bondholders to buy into that, they were doing a good job. And you know what I love about the management of NAD was that Eggleston Bahamianized that whole team. So they were Bahamianized. So I like that. I like that. It's just an extension of it. I mean, whatever you. And then she made reference to the $60 the trailers in San Andres. You know, I wasn't paying $60 a square foot to rent no building in Andres. I just couldn't do it. I just could not bring myself to do that. So in the meantime, we put brand new trailers as we contemplate the construction of a new terminal, right? So, but I couldn't continue to pay $60 a square foot for real estate in San Andres, not Denisio James Diaglo, no sir. So that's that. But I bet, you know, that's that. Yeah. So I had hold on. So Mr. Speaker, it takes me great pleasure to close this debate on this bill and to move it to the next stage in getting this passed. Thank you very much.
Honorable members,
The minister referred to the...
the chair recognizes Honorable Member Fangerson.
Thank you, Speaker. The member has now advised the Bahamian people in a more formal way that the agreement with Vantage Airport Group, not NAD, but he said not, has been extended for a further 10 years. I'm asking him if he can now lay on the table of the Parliament the agreement that has been struck with the Canadian group for another decade of management of LPIA, if he would be prepared to do that, please. I didn't hear you. I wonder if you could put on the record, please. Can you put on the record that you'll do?
I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
I gotta see if you did it the first time.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time. That the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to establish the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority of the Bahamas and codify the laws and regulations related to the conduct of investigations into aircraft accidents and incidents in the Bahamas or concerning Bahamian registered aircrafts. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to establish the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority of the Bahamas and codify the laws and regulations related to the conduct of investigations into aircraft accidents and incidents in the Bahamas for or concerning Bahamas registered aircraft.
Further, second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further second readings, and at this time, Mr. Speaker, I will move that the House resolves itself into a committee of the whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair. No, there's no second. So, no, it's just no. It's just the regulations. No, we just said the air accident. Yeah, we didn't do the civil aviation.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House now resolve itself into committee of the whole with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole in the chair. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole with the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole in the chair.
Committee of the Whole. Chair recognizes Bamboo Town.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the long title of a bill for an act to establish the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority of the Bahamas and codify the laws and regulations related to the conduct of investigations into aircraft accidents and incidents in the Bahamas or concerning Bahamian registered aircraft be agreed.
Do I have a seconder? It's been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many members are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the short title and commencement be agreed.
It's been moved and seconded that the short title and commencement of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The short title and commencement of the bill is agreed.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that clauses 2 through 30 be agreed.
It's being moved. 2 through 30.
2 through 30 be agreed.
As many members that Chair recognizes the member Frankenstein.
Mr. Chairman, I heard the minister's explanation for the 2.5-year delay of bringing this bill. I think he indicated that it was because of something in 2017 that the aircraft registry has not been, but I think he also said that he effectively just lifted the terms of this from something online. And I'm just wondering if the minister can clarify why it has taken 2.5 years to comply with the Annex 13 Because you've indicated it's something 2017, but you've been there for 2.5 years. Are you able to indicate whether there was any other external issue?
Microphone.
Oh, are you able to? And what I was saying is that the minister has indicated that the delay in the aircraft registry has something to do with something that happened in 2017, which is 2.5 years ago. And he's also said that the terms of this bill have been essentially lifted, or the template has been taken offline or online from ICAO. And I'm just wondering if the member can explain why it is that there was such a significant delay in bringing this legislation in the circumstances in which you indicate you were basically copying what was being done in other jurisdictions, and more specifically ICAO.
You have a specific question.
Yes.
That's where we are in this process. We're not into debating
so you're
this.
not, okay, I know.
I just wanted to know if you had a specific question about a specific section,
Okay,
because that is where we are in this legislation.
Right. No, I wanted to know because I didn't want the Bahamian people to think you were misleading the Parliament, and that's really why I was hoping that you would clarify it, so that would not be left on the record that you have sought to mislead the Parliament. But yes, I want to ask you, why is it that when you consider the jurisprudential development on the admissibility of the reports in civil proceedings, if you could indicate, sorry.
I was going to just.
No, let me finish my question.
Hold on 1 second, Angleston. The member for East Grand Balmer. I was going to let the member for Angleston just finish that thought.
Right.
Because, like what? Hold on, just 1 second. Like what Freetown, like what Freetown had raised. I was just going to let her finish because I was going to. I was going to let. I think I know where you're going. But Freetown. I'm sorry, Fred Angleston. We at the stage now of hold on 1 second. We at the stage of
amendment to clause 4.
Okay. Let's
and I'm putting
do
the
that.
background to it. Is that okay?
Well, you know you could do the background, but you
Parliament?
No, but you sound as if you're speaking as if you're now still debating the issue.
No, I'm not debating.
Yeah.
I'm saying that.
But let's clarify it. Let's clarify and go to the section.
In the debate, both from Cat Island and myself, this is quite relevant to what we saw in this Parliament today. Yeah. The issue arose about the admissibility of the reports of the investigations in civil proceedings.
And where was that?
That's clause 4, specifically.
Objectives.
Yes, clause 4.
File report should
not be used. And I want to suggest it, and I was asking the member before in light of, he may have a very good reason, but I'd like to hear it before I seek an amendment. But the amendment would be, but it'll be based on his explanation. I may accept the explanation and withdraw the request or the submission of an amendment. Why it is, what was the reason? I said jurisprudential, but what is the reason that you have chose this route as opposed to what we see developing the common law, where these investigation reports are admissible? And in that event, I would seek to make suggest an amendment that final reports shall be used or may be used in any court proceeding or in any other proceedings related to apportioning blame or liability as to the facts and or expert opinion evidence therein.
You're moving
an amendment?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's being seconded.
But we need to.
It hasn't been?
We need to.
Oh.
The problem is I don't have a draft amendment to even consider.
No. So can I go through? Can I just? He said he wants a typed up amendment.
That can be seconded and put to the floor.
Yeah, we'll write it down now. Thanks, St. Anne's. We always could rely on you as the grandfather of the house. You're the grandfather. Santa Claus?
And while Cat Island is doing that, is there any other section between section 20 and 2 and 30 that you want to address?
Yes. So no, that would be.
The member of Cat Island will note your proposed amendment.
But I think
to
he also
section
has
four.
some amendments or observations or concerns.
Well, if you have some concerns, is it relating to the same section?
Yeah, might I just...
I'm saying, why don't you give somebody else that to make the right amendments while you speak in another section? Because we'll be motion is on.
Clause 4?
Mr. Chair, a motion is put on the floor. They need to construct that on a piece of paper so that it can be agreed. You
But that's what I'm saying.
to some other clause or some other motion while there's a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Well, Angleston, would you read the motion? The proposed amendment?
So the motion would be that in clause 4, subparagraph 4, that you delete the word not, shall not, and substitute may. Delete shall not.
Substitute.
And substitute may be used.
Do I have a seconder?
And yes, and can I add at the end of liability as to the facts and or expert opinion evidence therein?
Order that the amendment be brought up.
Thank you.
Proposed amendment.
And this is at the end. At the end of the Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded that clause 4, section 4, subsection 4 be amended as follows. Delete not at the end of clause 4.
So that should be shall not. Delete shall not and substitute may.
Delete shall not and substitute may. And add as to the facts.
At the end of clause 4.
That's why you need to write this up properly.
At the end of clause 4.
At the end of clause 4, add, and I quote, as to the facts and or the opinion evidence contained therein.
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded that the amendments, proposed amendments be accepted. As many members that are in favor will rise. Those opposing.
No, that's not the norm, man. You're presuming something. That's so private. You
All right.
do the normal way, man.
As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise.
You don't need the exercise. Some of y'all put on about 20 pounds since you've been there.
Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, the amendment is defeated. It's being moved and seconded that clause 2 through 3 of the bill be agreed. Through 30, of the bill be agreed. Chair recognizes member for Ken Island.
Would you bring me a sheet of paper? I gotta catch up to it. Mr. Chairman, I move that clause 24 be amended. By deleting subsection 2 and substituting therefore the following. Where, in the chief investigator's opinion, publication of a report.
Before you finish, what section you said? 24?
24.
24-2.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That now reads the authority shall not disclose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Delete that section.
Yes.
And substitute, therefore, the following. Where, in the chief investigator's opinion, publication of a report required by this act to be published is likely to adversely affect the reputation of a person, the chief investigator shall not submit the report, should not publish the report until he has, where it appears to him to be practicable so to do, serve a notice on the person, or where the person is deceased, on the person who appears to him to best represent the interests of the deceased at the time he proposes to serve the notice, and made such changes to the report as he thinks fit, following consideration of representations made to him in accordance with paragraph 3. Made to him by or on behalf of the person served with the notice under subparagraph 8. This is going to be attached. I understand it. I'm just reading what.
Yes, I'm listening to the proposed amendment.
The notice referred to in subparagraph A of paragraph 1 here shall include particulars of any proposed analysis of facts and conclusions as to the cause or causes of the accident or incident which may affect the person on whom or in respect of whom the notice is served. Subject to paragraph 5, representations made pursuant to subparagraph B of paragraph 1 shall be in writing and shall be served on the chief investigator within 28 days of the service of notice. So the person who is going to be affected, to whom the notice is sent, has 28 days to put in writing their response to the chief investigator. Then, this will be paragraph 4. No person shall disclose or permit to be disclosed any information contained in the notice or report served on such person
24.
pursuant to paragraph 1 to any other person without the prior consent in writing of the chief investigator. The chief investigator may, notwithstanding the period has expired, extend the period of 28 days described in paragraph 3. A person who contravenes or fails to comply with paragraph 4 or paragraph 7 commits an offense.
All of this, remember this, all of this is the amendment to section.
Yeah, there's a new section too. I given you a new section.
Yes, I'm just curious because it's pretty long. I'm just curious. I was wondering if you were going.
No, I spoke. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I spoke to these matters during the course of my debate.
Carry on.
No person shall circulate, publish, or give access to a draft report or any part thereof, or any documents obtained during an investigation of an accident or incident conducted by another state or the consent of that state, unless such reports or documents have been released by that state. So I just add that.
I have to read all that.
I know. I now hand up.
What are the proposed amendment be brought up? Carolyn, do you have a seconder?
Do I have a seconder?
Do you have a seconder?
I have 3.
Oh, well, I haven't heard anybody. For the record.
I said yes. All right. I haven't said yet, and I haven't passed
Brought it up.
yet.
Yes, yes.
All right, that's fine. Give me a second.
Hey, don't go there. Don't. What's the date? Chairman, we just handed up the memo as attached and as noted there. Thank you. Like to have a second.
I don't think you're on next to what that
It's been moved and seconded that clause 24, subsection 2, the bill be amended by deleting clause 24, subsection 2, and substituting it with the attached unmarked. Subsection 12, deleting subsection 12(1), deleting notwithstanding regulations 11.
No, where? Start with where? Right, Mark was on.
You have the delete, notwithstanding regulations 11(5), starting instead with where in the, again, the problem is understanding your writing, Ken Island. Where in the, Mr. Clark, can you help me with this? All right, fair enough. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. That section be deleted and amendments be accepted as read by the member for Cat Island, Ramkey, San Salvador. Members, as many members that are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The motion is defeated. It's being moved and seconded, members, that clause 2 through 30 of the bill be agreed. As many members, the chair recognizes the member for Angleton, Mr. Clark.
I just wanted to, further to my observations, I've just looked at the most recent assessment by ICAO, and these recommendations were made to the minister between the 13th and the 15th of November 2018. And for more than a year, nothing has happened. I know the member sought to attribute it to an earlier date to make a political point, and the member must not mislead the House. The member must not mislead the House. All of these things we're doing today were recommended more than a year ago to this minister. To this minister, has nothing to do with something that happened with the prior administration. It became the obligation when the assessment was made under this minister's watch. And so I just think, the only point I make, Mr. Chairman, is that we must be very factual and truthful with the Bahamian people.
It's being moved and seconded that clause 2 through 30 of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. Clause 2 through 30 of the bill is agreed.
The schedule of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It's being moved and seconded that the schedule of the bill be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The schedule of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that the bill in its entirety be now agreed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the Speaker takes the chair.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Speaker now do take the chair. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The Speaker will now take the chair. Beg leave to report that the Committee of the Whole has gone through the bills, making no amendments thereto. No amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the chairman of the Committee of the Whole and Deputy Speaker has reported that the Committee of the Whole has gone through the bill, having made no amendments thereto. Third reading and passing of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to establish the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority of the Bahamas and codifies the laws and regulations related to the conduct of investigations into aircraft accidents and incidents in the Bahamas or concerning Bahamian registered aircraft.
Mr. Chair, I second that.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time. A bill for an act to establish the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority for the Bahamas and codify the laws and regulations related to the conduct of investigations into aircraft accidents and incidents in the Bahamas or concerning Bahamian registered aircraft. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a third time.
A bill for an act to establish the Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority of the Bahamas and codify the laws and regulations related to the conduct of investigations into aircraft accidents and incidents in the Bahamas or concurring Bahamian registered aircraft, concerning Bahamian registered aircraft.
Order that the bill do now pass and the title thereof be declared to be Aircraft Accident Investigation Authority Act 2019. For the third reading and passing of bills.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further third readings.
Thank you. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Members' statement. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Pine Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'd like to take this opportunity on member's statement to wish the good and gracious people of Pine Ridge a very Merry Christmas, a very blessed and prosperous New Year, and also wish to do likewise to my colleagues here in this honorable chamber, and wishing you all the best for the new year. And I'd like to say that it's been a good year, interesting year, a year that calls for reflection and meditation. And so I just want to say to the good people of Pine Ridge, and its course extended throughout the people throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas as well. Merry Christmas, and may God allow all your best wishes to come to pass in 2020. God bless. Thank you.
For the member statement, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, this is not necessarily a member statement, but I do want members to know that we are coming back next week, Wednesday, when we will have our Christmas luncheon. So all of us will be able to. I know Pine Ridge had spoken. Pine Ridge will have an opportunity to do it again. Why?
The chair recognizes the honorable member for the Exumas and Ragged Island.
I give you a little bit of that.
Speaker, firstly, I wish to point out that on the 14th
I have something for the agenda.
one of the residents of Doma invited to a Christmas extravaganza regarding speak 12 noon. Second, Speaker, I mentioned earlier, a town meeting on the 15th at 7 p.m.
E.C. McKinsey Auditorium. The first event was the Christmas extravaganza Regatta Park on the 14th at 12 noon. The second event is the town meeting sustaining a prosperous Exuma on the 15th at 7 p.m. Thirdly and finally, Mr. Speaker, I make representation on behalf of all of the Junkanoo groups of Exuma who are eagerly awaiting their seed money for the Junkanoo parades this year. As at today, they have not received the same, and I've spoken privately with the minister responsible. I noticed that she's not here at the moment, member for Seabreeze. However, Mr. Speaker, the hundreds of members of the Junkanoo Troopers of Exuma who put on a fantastic affair for Boxing Day are in urgent need of the government's intervention. And I ask the government to continue to please provide this support in an expeditious manner, as this forms a critical component of our Christmas tourism product and to the delight of the locals, Mr. Speaker. So I thank the government, I thank the member for Seabreeze for expediting this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In life, there is also death. So to my hometown, the community of Smithville in South Andros, the family of the late Ansel Smith, his mom and dad, the late Belock and First Tina Smith of Smithville, and also Velma Bastian, our parents, late Reverend Pete Trill and Alfred Bastian of Smithville, and members of the Smithville community, members of the GUBA, the Grand United Burial Association. Remember, for now, I just know when I'm talking about Burial Society, knows of which I speak. His father would have been a strong proponent of Burial Society. They're dying out now in North Andros. And Elder Preston Johnson and the Reverend Arlene Smith. And to the family members of the community of Smithville, our thoughts and our prayers are with you. On the 12th of December, we'll be in Mangrove Key for the annual Christmas festivities there at the Administrators Building in Mangrove Key on the 12th. On the 14th, we head to the Bluff in South Andros for the Christmas party in the Bluff in South Andros for the government's complex. On the 15th is the Christmas event in Deep Creek in South Andros, also that Christmas evening. And also on the 15th, on that Sunday morning in Central Andros, we have the Christian Council having their Christmas festivities in Fresh Creek at the roundabout in Fresh Creek at 11 a.m. Apostle Lorindo Dane and members of the Christian community in Central Andros. And that evening at 7 p.m., there's a fundraiser at the Bahamas Cancer Society in Central Andros at St. Paul's Anglican Church, where the rectors, the Father Neil Ned, at St. Paul's that evening to raise funds for the Cancer Society of Central Andros, headed by Mrs. Elizabeth Hanna. On weekend past, they were at the Marion Forbes Center in South Andros for the Cancer Society fundraiser in South Andros with the Reverend James Pratt. So for all these events, we're asking persons in the communities to be involved as we look forward to a great Yuletide season. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further member statements? Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to give notice that at the next sitting of this House, I intend to move the following resolution, which will be laid today. Whereas Article 49F of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas mandates a sitting member of Parliament who becomes interested in any government contract to vacate his or her seat. And whereas Proviso 1 of Article 49F of the Constitution enables the House of Assembly to exempt any member from vacating his seat pursuant to Section to Article 49F in circumstances where it appears to be just to do so, if that member, before becoming interested in such a contract, or as soon as practicable after becoming so interested, discloses to the House of Assembly his interest therein. And whereas a resolution was brought to Parliament to approve the government entering into a 5-year leasehold agreement for a portion of the Town Center Mall for the relocation of all premises of the General Post Office, pending the construction of a new General Post Office by the government
by way of a public-private partnership, and whereas the leader of the opposition and member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador objected to a debate on the resolution ensuing in circumstances where the member for St. Anne's had not vacated his seat as mandated by Article 49F of the Constitution, it being commonly known that he was an owner or had an interest in the town center mall, an interest he had not declared as required. And whereas the leader of the opposition and member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador, pointed out that the Parliament had not exempted the member from vacating his seat, and that required a resolution of the House. And whereas it was further pointed out that the House was tasked to debate upon a resolution whether to exempt the member or not from vacating his seat on the premise that whether in all the circumstances it appeared just to do so. And whereas, falling upon the objections from the member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador, the member of Bamboo Town, the leader of government business in the House, moved a resolution to exempt the member for St. Anne's from vacating his seat, which was approved by majority members. And whereas the resolution to approve the lease was debated and the resolution was approved and passed by the majority of House members, and whereas the resolution to approve the lease, expressly stated that the member of St. Anne's had no part in the negotiations, discussions, and decision in respect to the lease agreement. Specifically, the resolution of the 24th of October 2018 said, and I read and quote from the resolution, and whereas one of the beneficial owners of the said town center mall is a serving cabinet minister who did not take part in the discussions leading to the decision to accept the offer to lease portions of the building, which will be made suitable for the operations of the General Post Office at the expense of the landlord, which minister has nonetheless declared his interest. That was specifically said, Mr. Speaker. And whereas the member for St. Anne's, Honest Abe, clearly stated and publicly admitted during a nationally televised interview following his resignation or retirement from cabinet that he was intimately involved in discussions with the Prime Minister, the member for Kalani, on the terms and conditions of the said lease agreement, leading up to the decision to accept the offer to lease portions of the town center mall. And whereas, in his endorsement and approval of the resolution, the member for Kalani, in his contribution, expressly, knowingly, and deliberately misled Parliament and House members in that he said that the member for St. Anne's was not involved in discussions, negotiations, and or the decision concerning the lease or its terms. And whereas the member for Kalani knowingly, deliberately violated at least two of the principles of the FNM's adopted and paraphrased 7 principles of public life contained in their party's manifesto, specifically on the principle of integrity. Holders of public office should not act or take decisions to gain financial or other material benefit for themselves, their family, or their friends. Additionally, on the principle of honesty, holders of public office should be truthful. And on the principle of openness, holders of public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public unless there are clear and lawful reasons for so doing. And whereas there is precedent by this Honorable House in taking decisive actions to resolve serious breaches of the ancient democratic conventions that underpin and sustain the honor and integrity of this House, that of truth and honesty between and among House members. Specifically, at or around 1990, the former, that should not be here, but that should not be here, but I'll put it in, shouldn't be here, but yeah, that will be deleted. And whereas, given the foregoing, read that again?
Honorable member, if you could just indicate the portion that you would like to withdraw.
I have marked it up. So when I lay it over, I will.
But it's being read. Just indicate the portion.
The portion that starts, and whereas there's precedent by this honorable House in taking decisive action to resolve serious breaches, should be deleted. And everything else
should be expunged. That should be okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And whereas, given the foregoing, that the member of for Kalani knowingly, intentionally, and deliberately misled this honorable House, we ask that in their deliberations, House members uphold the ancient tradition, convention, and precedent of these hollow chambers by placing the honor and integrity of this honorable House above partisan politics and cult of personality. Now be it resolved that this honorable House has no confidence in the member for Kalani to continue to serve as Prime Minister or in this honorable House.
Order that the notice be brought up.
Do we have any references? I lay over there. That's it.
Yes, thank you. Order that the notice be brought up. Order that the notice to lie on the table and to be included on the agenda of the House.
I draw your.
The chair further recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkin, San Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I draw attention to the people in the event the government wishes to guide.
Rule 52?
Yes.
Honorable members for the opposition, further notices? Any further notices for future meetings? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I note the fact that all notices laid in the name of Her Majesty's loyal opposition remain. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkin, San Salvador.
To clarify, it will be whereas number 13 contained in the notice. That is deleted therefore. I just numbered them, just in the event someone wants. I'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that.
Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to renew all matters in the name of the government, Mr. Speaker, and to signal that the House will convene on Wednesday, the 11th of December, 10 a.m., 2019. Oh, yes. So, Mr. Speaker, I do now move a motion that this House adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 11th of December, 2019.
Second. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to Wednesday, the 11th of December at 10 a.m. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns.
Speaker, I second that.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 11th of December, 2019. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to Wednesday, the 11th of December at 10 a.m.
All right.